My fellow Americans,
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions
No,
of
I got
relevant
that.
resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You've indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access. yes.
Compel. Well, okay, compel. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
That I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get
NIH,
one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
no
is
one is
molecularly.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That
you
is
can't
not.
Get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible to result in SARS-CoV-2.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
won't admit the truth.
And you implying...
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, on this Wednesday into Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. On this show, we tend to cover the stories the mainstream media ignores. We just follow the truth. We have no agenda, and we follow the truth wherever it takes us. And we're looking at the latest pandemic. The World Health Organization holding an emergency meeting about the next pandemic. They've already had talks and been mobilizing, of course, the big pharmaceutical companies. Bill Gates is super excited about this. Meanwhile, Elon Musk coming out basically slamming the globalists on all of this, saying, hey, enough is enough. We don't need these world governments taking over the entire planet. So we will talk about that on the show today.
Yes, indeed. Plus, we are going to give you an update on these balloons that are not balloons. What are world governments shooting out of the sky and why? It's the nuttiest stinking thing.
It is really. I mean, to hear these members of the Senate coming out basically saying, well, we'll tell you what they're saying. And it's actually kind of scary where they're pushing this country right now. We're also going to look at Scotland, a country in chaos, which continues to push for its independence as the head of the country. Nicola Sturgeon is now stepping down. There's no one really to take her place with the political acumen. She was a darling in the West. So what is going on in Scotland? There's a lot to unpack in that country.
Yeah, I can't wait. We're going to give her the Jacinda Ardern treatment and try and figure out why.
That's not a good treatment. We're gonna literally rake her over the coals and pick her apart like Jacinda Ardern of Australia or of New Zealand.
But I want to be fair, but I'm passionate about this.
Not with this woman.
Okay.
Not with this woman. We're not fair. Plus, we're also going to look at the latest Epstein documents. And investigative journalist Whitney Webb is going to be joining us to unpack this latest round of names that are being released. Is there more to this story than meets the eye? All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Winston333 in our YouTube chat says, this comment section is always wild. This live chat. We've got the best viewers in all of streaming media. And we're on live on YouTube. We're live on Rumble. We have the best audience. I loved all of your passionate comments, the back and forth, the discussion here. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And this is the time of the month where I tell you about our public service announcement, which is we do a 30-minute countdown at the beginning of the show because we are live. Because I saw some people last night asking, like, why do you have a 30-minute countdown? Again, if you're watching the replay, you can just fast forward right to the 30-minute mark and start the show. We do that because YouTube and Rumble send out their alerts, and it takes their sweet time for people to get their notifications. How long does it take you to get your notification when we're live? Usually 10, 15 minutes. And so the reason we have that 30-minute intro is so that you can all get settled in. You don't miss any of the show. And we start every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So you don't have to sit through it.
Yeah.
It's just there as like a buffer, basically.
Or if you do want to sit through it, then, open another window and do your customer support chat with T-Mobile
Play
or whatever.
Game. Do your taxes, do your taxes or hang out in the chat room. We do have a daily newsletter, by the way. If you go to redacted.inc, it's totally free. I think we had a record number of signups last night for our newsletter. And we hope we bring you value because it publishes first thing in the morning around 6:37 a.m. Eastern time. You can read it over your cup of coffee. It takes like 5-10 minutes, and we kind of cover about 5 or 6 of the big stories that you might have missed overnight. So all you do is you go to redacted.inc, not .com. You put in your email address. You'll receive a welcome email. Just click on that welcome email to confirm that you want to receive it. You have to do that. You have to verify it. And then tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, you'll get the latest newsletter. And we do it Monday through Friday. So and occasionally we have some good financial ones that we do on the weekends as well. So anyway, check it out. Redacted.inc is the place to go.
Speaking of Monday through Friday, I would like to let you guys know that we are going to do a Friday show this week. By popular demand, we're just going to give it a little try on a Friday
And if
afternoon.
it does well, we might start doing it all the time.
I don't know, but give it a shot because normally we do Monday through Thursday. So you can calendar invite yourself. Or us. You can also invite us, but we will be here. We already know because we're doing a Rare Friday episode. So you're getting 5 full shows this week. What do you think of that? For free.
Join us 4 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. So we hope we'll see you there. All right, let's get to the news. Let's talk about this latest World Health Organization gearing up for its next pandemic. And it already has basically its next virus all ready to go. Like we were wondering, they've been warning us, by the way, that this is about to happen. They've been telling us, like, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when this is going to happen. And by the way, they were gaming out COVID months ahead of time. Right, we were learning about their sort of game theory and everything that they were rolling out and testing months ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Fauci even told us, of course, that it's going to happen under Trump's calendar.
Yeah.
And it absolutely did. So here's the next one that they're already gaming out in Africa.
Okay, so it is called Marburg virus. The World Health Organization already has a vaccine team in place. In fact, we know when they started if we read their documents, which we did today, and we're going to show it to you. So yesterday, on Tuesday, Valentine's Day, the World Health Organization convened an emergency meeting to discuss an outbreak of Marburg virus in Central Africa. Marburg, essentially, I just want to make this clear, is a town in Germany where the virus was first discovered in 1967. It is presumably not there now, but maybe we'll see this called out as a racist virus name because it's linked to a place that has happened before.
That's good. They're going to change the name because it's not as sexy. It needs to be able to, like monkeypox. It needs to be something that we put on television and that they try to scare us all into going and getting a vaccine for.
Right. Well, they wanted us to stop associating COVID with China. Because they thought that was a racist thing to do. So Marburg is associated with Germany where there is not an outbreak. So I'm just predicting right now that could cause a problem because we've been through it.
I'm going to guess gorilla flu. Just because it affects mostly primates.
It does, in fact. Yes.
Although we're on kind of a tear with picking on Germany lately. We just blew up their pipeline. So, we just blew up the pipeline to, bringing natural gas to Germany and throwing that country into chaos. So we can why don't we call it the Heidelberg virus?
Yes. In fact, Marburg is associated with monkeys and gorillas and bats as well. So we can choose species. Bats are not a primate.
No, not that I know of.
Right, Philip?
They're a mammal.
Bats they're definitely not a primate.
They're not a primate. They're not a member of the monkey family.
Unless it's like one of those, like a duck-billed platypus is not a duck. It's like, is that a trick question? No. Okay. So we all learned that together. Bats are not a primate. Okay, so the World Health Organization says that at least 9 people have died from the virus that is now spreading through Equatorial Guinea with a confirmed 16 cases. Now, they're saying that based on past outbreaks, they have a fatality rate of 88%. But this one, I can do the math also, 9 out of 16 cases, it's 56% fatality rate. Not great.
No, Virginia says in our chat, says it's very, very dangerous. Very, very nasty.
Yes.
Virginia Vikings. It's very, very nasty. This Marburg thing. Yeah.
It's a hemorrhagic fever. So it's pretty nasty. I've seen estimates as high as 90% fatality rate.
Wow. And that's a point too with COVID, right? With COVID, it wasn't as nasty, right? It was not as bad as they wanted it to be.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny. Like we sat down and watched that movie, during lockdowns, and we're like, oh, well, if, the pandemic looked like this, where everyone was throwing up, we might...
Throwing up blood.
Yeah, we might feel a little bit different.
But, now we got it.
But yeah, so that's what we got. So absolutely, we should not be downplaying this, like, oh, they're going to make us think that this is scary. This is scary enough on its own. So we're just going to talk about what the World Health Organization is doing and not act like they are faking us out, right? Because it's scary. We don't want anybody to get it. We also don't want anybody to exploit it. We don't want either of those things. The World Health Organization says that they convened an urgent meeting of the Marburg Virus Vaccine Consortium, which is called MARVAC, to discuss the outbreak. This is their update on Tuesday's meeting. Well, what's MARVAC? What is that, and when did it become a thing? Turns out it became a thing in October. Here is the paper. I'm just going to show you the title page. An introduction to MARVAC, to the Marburg Virus Vaccine Consortium. It is dated, if you zoom in there, October 13th, 2022. So relatively new, this MARVAC vaccine program for Marburg virus.
It's so convenient how they managed to get these things just a few months ahead of time, isn't it?
Right. And so who is involved in Marvac? Well, let's zoom in there on the title page. Next one. Institute for Virology from the National Institute of Health. Fauci related, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, U.S. COVID response at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, all other kinds of, health departments and colleges and other states, science labs. Also, Boston University School of Medicine, where they did gain-of-function research on COVID.
Yeah.
And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So a lot of the same players that were controlling the COVID pandemic already are involved in Marvac. So
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm surprised at the bottom it doesn't say, and Bill Gates.
Right.
Well, they don't have to because, as we know, and we've talked about on this show, the World Health Organization is mostly funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So at the heart of the World Health Organization is Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. He has his hands in all of this. And each of those institutions we just talked about are also funded. Boston University, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Each of these are funded by him.
Right.
So we don't need to put his name there. He does it through surreptitious ways.
Okay, so what is Marburg virus? How would we recognize it if we saw it? It is in the same family as Ebola virus. It's said to cause a viral hemorrhagic fever, which can lead to bleeding from the nose and mouth. Symptoms can include lethargy, dehydration, nausea, vomiting, sore throat, and abdominal pain. And where does it come from? Well, according to this statement from the WHO, it is transmitted to humans by fruit bats and spread through direct contact with bodily fluids of infected people, surfaces, and materials. But if you read the Marvac paper, it also does mention primates as well. So I don't know why there's bats and primates, why it seems to be in multiple species. But that
I know yesterday I neglected to explain something that I knew, but I'll go ahead and throw this one in there.
Okay.
Bats are oftentimes what they call reservoir species, which means they carry but they don't contract the virus.
Oh.
So bats are actually a fairly common reservoir species for viruses. So but when they're talking about the difference, the bats can carry it but they don't get it. But Marburg is a filovirus, which basically affects primates. So primates are the ones that get infected. Bats can just carry it around.
A reservoir creature.
Maybe.
And they call
it eradicate all bats.
Species.
Okay, so I'm just thinking this out in real time because the statement on the emergency Marvac meeting today only mentioned bats as
right. So it doesn't sound like it's very transmissible.
Is this another thing that they're trying to sort of wash out anything that could sound woke, like to say primates maybe can be called racist in a way? I mean, because the Marvac paper says that it is transmissible mostly through the outbreaks have been observed in non-human primates. That was the original outbreaks. So I'm just wondering because the statement today did not mention primates at all.
Well, and also it's not very transmissible from what I'm gathering, right? That they're scaring us. They're having this emergency meeting. They're talking about, they're all wearing masks. They're talking about the transmissibility of this. But if it's just through bats, through primates, through surfaces and materials,
but
what
you
does that mean?
contract it from infected individuals. So obviously you want to isolate people who have it and not have a spread in the community.
Of course, and this is exactly what they want, right? This is what they've been prepping for. They want us to stay. Remember, at the heart of all of this, guys, this is written down, and what they're telling us is that they want us to work from home, get rid of our cars. Europe just this week announced that by 2035, they're getting rid of combustible automobiles, right? That's their plan by 2035.
Yeah.
They want us to work from home. They want 15-minute cities. They don't want us driving, and they want this. They want us to stay in these environments like this.
Well, you're making large leaps about something that people actually have. Like, there are 16 cases. We absolutely should all not want there to be more. And yes, the World Health Organization does make big power grabs, but I think in the context of discussing this, we can't look at this data and say, well, they're saying it's deadly, but maybe it's not. They just want to scare us. Like, that's irresponsible of us to be saying.
But be very, I'm just saying, we got to walk into this cautiously. 3 years ago, we know what they did to us, right? So all I'm saying is watch this very closely. And if they start to move towards, here we go with lockdowns again, here we go with keeping our kids home from school again. Well, sure, there could be a narrative like that virus wasn't scary enough, so let's make them start bleeding from their noses, then they'll stay home. I get that, but in the context of this segment right now, we are looking at this happening to real people and this data, and I don't want to be like, yeah, right, they're saying that. Like, that's not responsible of us to do.
I want to bring up something somebody said in chat that if it's true, kind of ties it to this would take some research, but it's Eclectic Dyslexic says Marburg comes from polyvinyl chloride in the water system, which would tie right into the train thing because that's what is that not what it had in it?
What?
The vinyl chloride in Ohio?
The polyvinyl chloride, yeah, in Ohio.
What are the... I don't understand.
No, there's no relation to polyvinyl chloride and Marburg virus. This has been around since like 1967.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just saying that's what somebody said in chat, so I was just like curious.
Yeah, so vinyl chloride has nothing to do with it. So we're going to shoot conspiracy theories down. I'm simply throwing out there what the World Health Organization and the WEF has been pushing for.
Sure.
So I'm just saying to walk cautiously when they start to tell us and try to scare us, and that's what I'm trying to make sure that we
but don't come up here and armpit fart on every data point that I'm presenting from a scary virus. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I want us to take this with a grain of salt and be educated.
Yes.
But we should not, read everything that they transmit and be like, yeah, that can be.
I didn't say that. Did I say that, chat?
Is his demeanor like that? Philip, take my side.
Look, we've just been through 3 years of them lying to us.
I know better than to get involved.
Yeah. Philip's a smart man. Okay, go ahead. I won't interrupt anymore with armpit farting. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll have a coffee.
All right, do that.
I'll have a Mandalorian.
What was it? Oh, I want to tell you about vaccines. And you can...
Hold on. Let me armpit fart on that one. Oh, they want to give us vaccines already? It's amazing that they have these vaccines already rolled out.
But they're not mRNA. They're not mRNA. Right.
Let's go.
Clayton. All right. You keep it to yourself for a little bit, and then later you can huff and puff and blow your house down. Okay. Marvac has tested vaccines, but not in humans. And they say that they have had limited success with these vaccines, so they do want to continue testing them. They seem to already have a plan for them. This seems a little premature. Look at the plan. This was written in October. They think that if we get fast-acting single-dose vaccines deployed in vaccination campaigns during outbreaks, then routine vaccination of at-risk populations could be achieved with several candidate vaccines. And then regardless, the need for boosters will be determined by the durability of the acquired immunity during the respective vaccine campaign. I don't know about that. That just seems like a little too specific for a vaccine they really don't have and don't have approved. Don't you guys think a little premature to talk about a vaccine campaign when you haven't actually done human trials? I'd be interested to see if I can do a Wayback Machine and find any kind of vaccine plan like this around COVID. That was going through my head today, but I didn't have time to do that.
Isn't that considered the speed of science that you have the plan before the need or
that's
the
what
vaccine
I think.
and the schedule ready before? Yep.
Yeah. What about treatments? Well, there are some of those too that show some promising signs if taken early. Again, see this table from Marvac, and they have a bunch of antivirals here. Some also that were used on COVID with various degrees of success. This is just one page. There's 2 pages of these antiviral results. But if you see in the far right, the survival % rate, a lot of them are, fairly high, not terrible. If there was a plan to get these in people who were affected fast, that could be encouraging. The conclusions of this paper introducing WARPAC is that we need WARPAC and we need global research coordinations, including sharing of assays and continuous efforts on capacity building among private and public sectors. So we need a global health plan. Basically, global coordination. A global health system, you say? global powers, where actually Elon Musk had something to say about that just this week during the World Government Summit this week. Take a listen.
One thing I should say, and I know this is called the World Government Summit, but I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say, that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. And so, say like while Rome was falling, Islam was rising, and so you had like the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well while Rome was doing terribly. And that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge and many scientific advancements. And so, so I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse. I'm obviously not suggesting war or anything like that, but I think we want to be a little bit wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse, and humanity keeps moving forward.
Okay.
Well, I mean, so, just to put in context here, the World Health Organization, right, funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation overwhelmingly, right? Mm-hmm. An organization that is trying to take unelected control away from sovereign governments, right? We championed and cheered when Africa stood up and said no to World Health Organization omnipotent control of their governments, right? So that we would cede power to this unelected body during a next pandemic, that we would give them, and that's exactly what the United States is doing. So forget your constitution, forget whatever governments and freedoms you have in your own countries. Here you go, World Health Organization. Do whatever you want with us. There's a unified body of unelected globalists, billionaires, who are going to tell us what to do the next time we have one of these things. And it's like, oh, this is never going to happen again, right? It just happened 3 years ago. And we're literally still seeing mandates. We see Brazil in the past few days. We see Lula da Silva in Brazil calling for mandates for people who do not get vaccines for their children. They'll lose government services, right? This is happening. This is still happening.
Yeah.
So, I think I totally agree with Elon here, which is absolutely we shouldn't be ceding control of sovereign countries. And that's exactly what Klaus Schwab has been talking about. He said it multiple times. He just said it again a few weeks ago in Davos.
Right, because you can read into the implications of this, is that if the outbreak's in Africa and everyone globally has to comply with vaccine requirements, well, that's not a world anyone wants to live in.
Right. So let us know your thoughts on this. Do you agree with Elon? Who do you agree with? Do you agree with the World Health Organization in this? Let us know in the old chat room. We really appreciate it. We're going to talk about the UFO, the latest on Congress and these UFOs, because we heard, so the Senate had their intelligence committee. They had their secret briefing with the head of NORAD and NORTHCOM, and it seemed like a lot of them were fairly spooked about it. Now, is that a fake spookery? Like, are they trying to scare us with what they were told in these meetings? I don't know, a bunch of different senators from both parties had different things to say, and there's some really interesting UFO updates on all of this that we want to bring you. We're also going to talk about Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland and what's next for that country, which has been thrown into chaos. But first...
okay.
But first, let's tell them about... there's a special President's Day.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, we're going to tell you about our friends over at GhostBed, because there's nothing better than getting a great night of sleep, and sleeping on a mattress that's designed for your particular sleeping style can really help. That's why I'm excited to partner with GhostBed here at Redacted. GhostBed is a family-owned business that's been designing mattresses and other sleep products for more than 2 decades. They know that sleep is personal and mattress shopping can be overwhelming. It's a recipe for a fight if you go with someone else, too, who has a different mattress choice. So GhostBed takes the guesswork out of the equation with their online mattress quiz. Answer a few questions about your lifestyle and sleeping style, and they'll recommend the right GhostBed mattress for you. You'll get a 101-night sleep trial with free returns for added peace of mind, and shipping is fast and free. Plus, all GhostBed mattresses are proudly made in the USA. Now, with President's Day coming up, you can get a ton of great deals at ghostbed.com, and our listeners get 30% off GhostBed mattresses plus 2 free Ghost pillows and 2 silk luxury pillowcases for free when you spend $1,200 or more. So use the code REDACTED at ghostbed.com/redacted to take advantage of the offer. That's ghostbed.com/redacted. Use the promo code REDACTED.
All right. Let's talk about these balloons. Let's talk about these UFOs, because the White House has been making statements. The Senate has been making statements. The White House official now has admitted that the Chinese spy balloon probably wasn't actually a Chinese spy balloon at all. Or
the messaging for this is all over the place.
Yes.
So National Security spokesperson John Kirby has been saying all kinds of mumbo jumbo. He's saying, let's not really use the word balloon, but he continues to call it a balloon. We don't think it's Chinese, but the Chinese do this. And it's us who figured out that they do this. But that's not a thing. We don't have to worry about UFOs. It's a lot of who the heck knows? We're going to show you why it's so confusing. See what you can make of this. It's really crazy. One of the main things that he said just yesterday was, we haven't seen any indication or anything that points specifically to the idea that these 3 objects were part of the People's Republic of China's spying program, or that they were definitively involved in external intelligence collections efforts. That's a not. We're not.
So it's not. Okay.
But he did say Chinese spy balloons exist. They have found them, not the Trump administration. It wasn't these existed, wasn't them. We found it. High five. So, basically he's saying this was not unfounded, but maybe it was a slight overreaction. Listen.
The president also instructed the intelligence community to take a broad look at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial objects. Indeed, President Biden conducted the first ever daily intelligence briefing session devoted to this phenomenon back in June of 2021. He was briefed that this is not just an issue for the United States, but one for the rest of the world. And as I said, our friends and our partners are dealing with this as well. We worked on a bipartisan basis to stand up an office at the Pentagon to study this, in partnership with the intelligence community, academic institutions, and the private sector. These unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported for many years without explanation or deep examination by the government. President Biden has changed all that. We are finally trying to understand them better. Now, in light of the Chinese balloon program and this recent incursion into our airspace, the United States and Canada, through NORAD, have been more closely scrutinizing that airspace, including enhancing our radar capabilities, which, as the commander of NORTHCOM and NORAD, General Van Herk, said just last night, may at least partially explain the increase in the objects that have been detected. Slow-moving objects at high altitude with a small radar cross-section are difficult to detect on radar. Even objects the size of the Chinese spy balloon, which had a payload the size of roughly 3 school buses, were not picked up by previous administrations or other countries. We also know that a range of entities, including countries, companies, research, and academic organizations, operate objects at these altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious at all, including scientific research. That said, because we have not yet been able to definitively assess what these most recent objects are, we acted out of an abundance of caution to protect the security, our interest, and flight safety.
So he goes on to say they were over secure areas. They floated over. He does say that he doesn't think they had any steering capabilities, but they floated.
Yeah, and then the White House comes out and also admits that, hey, these things, it was Chinese, but it blew off course. There's nothing nefarious. Like, I mean, they're literally talking out of both sides of their mouth. I also believe that, I think once they found, like, they want us to be scared. They want us to be distracted with this. And once it was, the idea of a balloon is not scary, like, you know, kids holding a balloon, like, so they now need to change it. Now they need to really change this story, right?
But where they're not going anymore, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask a question really quick. So if a balloon is uncontrollable, how did they ever intend to bring it down then in the first place? Like, how did they think that this wasn't going to happen? Didn't they have to have some kind of control to like deflate it to bring it down?
Well, that's
or did they just plan on it?
No, that's a great question. That's one of the big questions that senators were asking as well. It's like, well, you said it was, you know, we couldn't really figure out where it's gone. We can't find these things now. So in the past 48 hours, we've shot down another 3 of these. NORAD has shot down, they've never shot down anything in their literally history. And now they've literally shot down 3 of these and we don't know where they are. Yet you shoot a balloon down, it goes like this. It's not like there's no flight path where it's continuing to fly.
Yeah.
So they're asking this, they're like, where the hell are these things? You see these giant school bus things in the sky that you're shooting down. We can't find them now?
Shouldn't you maybe go to people who do use these for weather purposes and say, how do you get them back? How does that work?
Well, now we're learning this afternoon that they're not even balloons. These things, now they're saying there's no amount of, and scientists are saying there's no amount of, you can't have a pressurized gas at that altitude. It just does not exist at the altitude where these things are being spotted at this point. So what the hell's happening here? So, but is it aliens? This is a question, of course, that the press corps has been asking, right?
Yes. So here's John Kirby's response to, is it aliens or extraterrestrial?
My understanding is that the top officials at the Pentagon, when asked explicitly if they were ruling out any kind of extraterrestrial presence, said they weren't ruling anything out. And yet at the beginning of today's briefing, albeit with her usual winning smile, Ms. Jean-Pierre seemed to rule out any extraterrestrial activity.
I don't think the American people need to worry about aliens with respect to these craft, period. I don't think there's any more that needs to be said there.
On the Russian...
So they're not Russian, they're not Chinese, they're not aliens, then what the hell? Okay, so what the hell?
Well, let's watch Corinne Jean-Pierre answer that same question about aliens, and the room literally laughs at her, and she was like, well, you wanted me to say it, so I'm going to say it.
I know there have been questions and concerns about this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity. With these recent takedowns, again, there is no indication of aliens or terrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. Wanted to make sure that the American people knew that, all of you knew that, and it was important for us to say that from here because we've been hearing a lot about it.
So something is going on here. I mean, something really, really fishy is happening here. Yeah. Because, I mean, if you think about the total distraction from the Nord Stream pipeline explosion, which I heard Senator Mike Lee today talking about, saying this could rise to an impeachable offense for President Biden. An impeachable offense for President Biden, carrying out a war crime, an attack, a terrorist attack on we're not at war with Russia. So this would be an impeachable offense where you don't have congressional approval to carry out a clandestine terror attack on a foreign country, an impeachable offense. And so they don't want you talking about that.
Is a war crime only an impeachable offense, or is that not a criminal offense? Like, doesn't go beyond impeachment at that point if it's a war crime?
Yeah, because impeachment really is just like kind of a slap on the hand, like you lose your job. Yeah. Right? You know, and then
not in this climate.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be a member of The Hague, which we are not. So we don't have to worry about the International Criminal Court anyway.
So there's no war crimes tribunal because we're not a part of it because we would be in violation of all of it. So Senator Mike Lee, speaking today to Glenn Beck, I found this absolutely fascinating. He was in this intelligence briefing yesterday with Northcom and NORAD and these other members of the military industrial complex that were giving this briefing behind closed doors, classified briefing. And he said, we literally walked out of here. We don't know. They don't know. And they couldn't tell us anything. Watch this. It's crazy.
And we hear this morning that they are UAPs, which I guess could be balloons, but usually those are, something solid. These were the size of cars, and they weren't balloons. They were metal. Is that true?
Yeah, so first of all, we don't really know what they are. I don't know how they claim now to know what their nature is, whether they're commercial, military, or from some other origin, because they haven't found them. I suspect at this point that they're theorizing on what it might be. That was what was so frustrating yesterday, is they held this classified briefing to tell us about what happened. And they showed up and basically said, we don't know what happened. We had all hoped and expected, based on public statements, that they had covered what was left of these objects and that they were studying them. They haven't found them, at least as of yesterday when they briefed us. They hadn't found them. They still don't really know what they are.
So wait, did they show you video? I don't know what you can and can't say.
No.
Come on, we launched missiles.
Yeah.
We know we have the video from the cockpits. We know that.
Yeah. We repeatedly asked them about that. Can you show us anything by way of photographic documentation of a video footage, anything like that? They said, yeah, we've got some that really isn't useful because the objects are so small, so far away, that the resolution doesn't really do anything for us.
Then why would we shoot them down?
The picture. It's an excellent question. So we shot them down, not knowing what they were, just based on their altitude. We just knew that they were there. But I still can't fathom why it made sense to scramble fighter jets, shoot missiles at them, bring them down when we have no idea what they are.
Okay. Yeah. Good questions, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what they are. We can't find them. We asked, as senators, can you show us the cockpit footage of this? Mm-hmm. Like we saw on the USS Nimitz, right? David Faber and others. Show us the cockpit footage. Show us the footage of you shooting these down. We don't want to show it to you because it wouldn't really help you because it's too small. You wouldn't understand it. Really?
Well, and what's the difference of like a cop seeing an unidentified object at the end of the street and just shooting it? You know what I mean? Like, no questions. It's like, I see this thing at the end of the street. Looks like it could be evil. I'm just going to shoot it.
I love in the chat. Someone says, shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah.
I can just shoot. Yeah. So we,
that works really well with what John Kirby. That works really well with what John Kirby said, that clip we played earlier, where he's like, we're trying to identify these. We're looking into it. It's like you can't identify something if your first reaction is to blow it up and then let it fall and then just leave it there, walk away,
and then we can't find it.
That's basically what they did.
Yeah.
I mean,
they didn't try to recover it. They're just like,
unbelievable.
No.
I mean, if it is a distraction, right, they really want our attention off of what's happening right now in Russia with Putin launching this massive offensive and NATO literally trying to go full force right now against Russia and China. And then, and also hide us from what's going on with NORAD, or the Nord Stream pipeline, et cetera. So why are they doing this? Well, I think Marco Rubio gave us some insights because he walked out of this briefing and he, of course, has been pushing over the past year for the military-industrial complex to be enlarged because of this UAP, UFO threat that he's not labeling China, he's not labeling aliens, he just wants you to be somewhere in the middle of it, but he also wants us to spend a lot more so we can expand the military-industrial complex. Listen to his response on all this. Watch.
We've heard the exact same description in hundreds of cases, dozens this year alone. So observing unidentified objects over U.S. airspace, particularly over sensitive areas of the country, is not new. What we heard in there described, what we've heard publicly described, sounds just like the stories we've heard repeatedly. And that's why an agency was created, an interagency task force was created to study all of this from a scientific perspective. And so my concern now is that the Department of Defense is not sharing that information with those scientists so that you can compare the data we have on these instances from the ones we have retroactively in the past, some of which have been explained, and so that we have a better understanding of this. And I think there's a stigma associated with this because of space aliens and all that stuff. This is not about that. This is about whether an adversary, in my mind, this is about whether an adversary has developed a capability that they know we're not looking for, because our systems are set up to see missiles and airplanes. They're not set up to see smaller objects at lower altitudes.
If they're not new, sir, then why were they shot down?
Well, that's what's new. No, that's what's new. What's new is that that they were shot down, which is extraordinary, because we've never shot down anything in 65 years of NORAD, and over one weekend they shot down 3 things. So, but the bigger concern now that everyone wants to know is what is it and what were they doing here, and but as they describe what's been observed.
Here it is, watch. This is when he calls for more money.
We have hundreds and hundreds of these over the years. The report that was issued by the Department of National Intelligence earlier this year lists over 500 such cases, dozens this year alone. So the question now has to be, why are they setting up a new task force? Take this data, make it immediately available to those scientists so you can enter it into that database, but also so you can cross-reference it and compare it to the other hundreds of cases that we have. That's the only way you're going to begin to get answers about what it is we're dealing with here, who it belongs to, what it's doing here. I imagine some of these are going to have explanations that are pretty simplistic. Others are going to be more complicated. I imagine some are frankly going to be crafts that were launched by a company or an individual or whatever, and others may not be. It may be nation states that have developed some rudimentary capability.
So the bottom line is we don't know. We don't know what they are. It could be space aliens. It's a national security threat to us. And we've shown you what this threat looks like now, right? We've shown you over the past couple of days what a threat this is to America. So we really need to ratchet up the amount of spend that we have on this, make sure our space force is now robust, and spend billions more in the military-industrial complex on this.
Well, they keep saying, though, that we think things like this are used for private purposes, like private companies' research and, sort of government research that is not nefarious. So, maybe we should spend our time finding those people and be like, do you use things like this? How do you use it? How does it work? Can you show me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, what is this high-altitude metal car-shaped thing that's floating up at the outer limits of space? It's not a satellite. It's not a weather balloon.
Somebody has to say, yes, I use this, and it's not a big deal if that's the case. So I'm listening for that.
Go ahead, Philip.
Well, so this is to me like a really good example of fear mongering, because what they're doing, the reason why everybody's so damn confused is because they are saying everything.
Yeah.
They're literally saying like things that are contrary to each other. They're saying them.
Yeah.
And so when you have everybody out there saying everything all at once, and then like how can people that I don't have access to military cameras. That's not something I can get access to. They've got it. They know. And so that's why they're saying everything.
Yeah.
Because that way we know nothing.
Right. And so people can say Project Bluebeam. We can say all of these like specific deep state programs to put out these ideas of aliens and spacecraft. Just read the great book Mirage Men. There's even a movie made about it, of course. So this like purposely putting out these stories so that we'll be distracted and everyone's confused and everyone's talking in circles. Meanwhile, the plan is unfolding exactly as they want it to. What exactly is that plan? We don't know. But clearly this is part of their plan to do this, carry out this crazy disinformation campaign about it and get us all scared.
Yeah. Philip's right, though. It's like all these words like aliens, research, weather, shooting things like this we
NORAD,
can. I think, we can armpit fart all over this if you want to.
Okay. But Senator Kennedy came out also, and he had some words. It's amazing, though, at the end of what he said after this briefing, though, and he tells us all to lock our doors. Like, a lot of people are like, whoa, Senator, why are you telling us to be scared about this? Like, we should be concerned that what you went into this briefing, came out of this briefing, and you don't know anything more than when you went in. You're more confused now. Like, we're paying billions of dollars for these guys to explain things to you, and you left more confused than when you went in? And then you're telling us to lock our doors. Watch.
This has been going on for a long, long, long time. At least 2017. And last week we were told 2019. That's what I took away from it today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Lock your doors tonight.
Thank you.
Lock your doors tonight.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, if it is aliens, they probably can get past a door lock.
Right. I'm sure they're not worried about a quick set door lock or whatever.
Yeah.
I just still maintain that, again, we're not talking about, we're continuing to talk about Nord Stream and making sure that it's top of mind for people. But the mainstream media is not. Everyone in that press room. Then you even had a reporter ask if President Biden was woke. That was literally one of the questions in the press room yesterday. Like, you're asking Corinne Jean-Pierre if President Biden is woke? How about...
What the hell does that even mean?
I don't know, but why don't you ask him about the Nord Stream pipeline? Let's drill deeper into that story Like, can we talk about, all right, the secret Navy training grounds for where these divers were trained? Let's get into the story. Ask real questions of these people. You're in the press room. They call on you. Don't ask stupid questions. Ask real questions.
Now, during all this kerfluffle, China has specifically said that the United States does use these kind of spy balloons over our territory, to which John Kirby has responded, no, we don't. That's absolutely false. And in this exchange I'm about to show you with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, he says, one, we don't call them balloons, but then he goes on to call them balloons. He says backwards and forwards things. And then he's asked if we spy on China. He says, well, we don't do that with balloons. And he says, do we spy on China at all? And I mean, again, it's the nuttiest stinking thing. So see for yourself.
John, welcome back. Thanks for joining us this morning. Martha just said it could take a while to figure out where these three objects were from. What more do we know about them? What were they? Were they balloons? Were they from China?
Yeah. We're not describing them as balloons right now, George. We're calling them objects because that's the best description we have right now. What I can tell you is they were very much smaller than the Chinese spy balloon, in cases about the size of a car. They did not appear to have any maneuvering capability, so they didn't look like they were piloted or anything like that. And again, they fell down in some pretty remote locations in the Northwest and, of course, over Lake Michigan. So it could take us a while to actually reach the debris, let alone have a chance to collect it and analyze it.
Probably not from China?
We don't know, George. It could be from a nation state. They could be from commercial entities, research scientific institutions. We just don't know.
So what's going on right now? We had years and years where we did not detect, at least that's what spokespeople have said, we did not detect Chinese balloons flying into the United States, into United States airspace. Now we're catching all these objects and shooting them down. Is there more of a threat, or are we just detecting more? And if we're detecting more, why?
There's two things here. One, we have been studying the Chinese spy balloon program since we came into office. This is a program that they have been working on for several years. So they have ramped up their abilities. They have ramped up their deployment of these balloons over just recent years. So that is fairly soon. And then because of the spy balloon, we changed some of the radar parameters for our air defense capabilities, particularly over the northern part of our hemisphere. And it is possible that in part, because of tweaking the radar sensitivities, we are simply seeing more objects right now.
What more can you tell us about the parts of the payload of the Chinese spy balloon that have been recovered?
We had some good weather over the weekend, George. They were able to bring up some parts of the debris, some of the structure of the payload itself. Some of those include some of the electronics. I don't want to get into too much detail, but we are starting to get things up off the bottom of the ocean there, and try to get it analyzed by the FBI. Weather was not permitting yesterday. We'll see what it goes today. If the sea state will permit divers to get down there.
Yeah, are the Chinese going to have to shut down this spy balloon program now that we've discovered so much about their capability?
Just use the same diving team that you blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. See, that's a question George should have asked. Like, John Kirby, are you going to use the same special diving team that you guys used to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline? Why can't they ask these kinds of questions?
I know, so obvious.
Like, come on, that's a question I would ask. That was a layup. Because that would have been my passive-aggressive way of it. Like, I'm going to start hosting a show called Passive Aggressive with Clayton Morris, and I'll just invite on people from the White House.
I'm on that show already.
You're on that show now, but you're not a member of the White House. Where I would say, Mr. President, when you guys blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and I would start the question like that, and I would do it very passive aggressively. And I would keep circling back to that question.
I imagine you would have one episode and one guest, and after that one guest, no one would come on.
I would keep rotating through different guests. They're like, hey, do you want to go on that show? It's a new show called Passive Aggressive with Clayton Morris. Like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then they never come back on again.
No,
I go through a whole Rolodex of people, and they wouldn't come back.
All right, we don't need to get back to that hot air.
No, we don't need to hear about Kirby.
But we learned more things from this, is that there are more countries now saying that they have more balloons. Now, Moldova and Romania both say they sent up military jets to shoot down balloon-like objects as well. And who helped them with that, do you think? According to the Daily Star, NATO. NATO, of course.
Of course. So Moldova and Romania are allies, NATO allies, and of course China and Russia are now threatening NATO allies. So we need NATO to respond. See how this is all.
And further, Japan just today all of a sudden said, actually, yeah, we remember some spy balloons in our area in recent years. They suddenly remember that too. The Japan, which is also Western aligned. So Western countries get balloons. It's like, you know, like a clown, like you give these kids these balloons, you know, and then Eastern countries get no balloons. They are perpetrators of balloons. That is the narrative thus far. We can shoot a lot of holes in it. You know, I mean, this is literally like the whole narrative of the end of The Wizard of Oz, why she needs to click her heels 3 times, because you can't bring the balloon back down.
Right.
You know?
And it's also when Toto reveals that the emperor has no clothes, right? There's no actual...
That happens before that, but you're right, you know? Because the wizard was sort of a fraud, because it was a scam of, and actually, there are all kinds of parallels about was it the New Deal or the Great Depression? And Wizard of Oz, it's a parallel. For American life and public relations as a distraction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's propaganda.
Yeah.
You're literally watching it in action. I hope they will study what we're watching right now in college at some point. And like, this is perfect propaganda for them to be studying how this thing unfolds, this whole story. The stuff that they fed to us.
Yeah.
We can watch the dates. We can watch what they were saying on the record at the White House, at the Pentagon, and then see what unfolds over the next few days, guys. Like, I'm telling you, something big is coming. And you can see it in action from what these guys are doing to us right now.
Yeah.
We've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. Investigative journalist Whitney Webb is going to be joining us on this latest Epstein story. So you want to stick around for that. Whitney is going to be here and is going to break that down for us. She is a genius. Of course, she's written 2 books on Jeffrey Epstein, and she is fantastic. So she's going to be here with that story. We're also going to look at the latest in Scotland around Nicola Sturgeon's stepping aside. What does that mean for independence in that country? What does it mean for transgender activism? All of those things are going to be discussed here in just a moment. But first, let's tell you about our friends over at Moomoo, because right now you can get 15 free stocks. 15 free stocks just for signing up for Moomoo by going to redacted.inc/Moomoo. And all you need to do is make your initial deposit. So you get a free stock when you open the account. Then you get additional stocks when you make your initial deposits in the account. They'll give you those stocks. And you can do nothing else with the account. Like, you make your initial deposit, sit there with it like a bank, and just wait. Wait while this weird volatility in the market goes away, and you can keep that money in the account and let it grow. Let these stocks grow over the coming year, 2 years, whatever you want to do. Then you cash it out, put it back in your own account. So that's all you have to do. But if you want to actually start trading and making some moves on some different commodity stocks like I do, on gold and silver producers and different minerals producers that we need desperately right now, silver, copper, etc., then you can do that all right inside the app as well. So if you want to set up alerts, set trades, study, and learn, you can do all of that. So, and Redacted is the place to go. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. That's the URL, not .com. It's redacted.inc/Moomoo to get your free 15 free stocks. Enjoy low margin rates, 0 commission trading. Check them out today. They've been a long time supporter of what we do here on the show. So thank you for their support on that.
And thank you to the commenter who reminded me that the Wizard of Oz is about the Federal Reserve. And
right. That's right.
Right. And it's set during a depression, and it's about the propaganda as government money, as this. It has so many great parallels. I could write you an essay, but I won't.
Also, you could take the Wizard of Oz and play, what is it, Dark Side of the Moon? You could set, what is it? You play Dark Side of the Moon. Yep. You hit play on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes.
The moment you see the lion roar, right? And then it's like this really crazy. I've never done that, but I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan. But
somebody put it on YouTube perfectly timed, so you can watch the whole thing on YouTube with the way that it's supposed to be.
That's cool.
Pretty neat.
That's fun.
Check that out.
Okay. I think I heard an interview with Roger Waters once, and he mentioned that on Joe Rogan, he might have said it was accidental.
Oh.
I think.
Joe Rogan.
So, yeah. I don't know.
Right. Let's talk about Scotland, shall we?
Yeah. Another Western female darling leader has resigned today. She's not a female darling. A Western darling female leader.
Okay.
That's how I wanted
Western
that to
leader?
be.
Darling female Western leader. And this is not a darling. I want to be clear. You say these things occasionally, and people in the chat are like, why would Natali think that she's a darling? No.
When I call someone a media darling, it means the media treats them as a superstar without critical thought.
Okay.
That's what I mean. I'm not saying I love that person or I think that they are awesome. A media darling, let's give some examples. Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, media darling. The media treats her as if she is royalty. Right. I want to say, I don't know, throw some out. Come on.
I don't know, Meghan Markle?
No, she's a media pariah.
Hillary Clinton.
No, guys, no, you're not doing this.
Depends on the news channel, but
you're doing this wrong.
I don't know.
Media darling, someone who is like fawned over, like
Princess Diana.
Yes.
You nailed it though with Michelle Obama. Like
Michelle Obama,
without any critical
media darling.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna call Nicola Sturgeon a media darling and a female leader. She has resigned today, unexpectedly. She's the first minister of Scotland, and she also was the first woman first minister. She's held this post since 2014. This was not expected. She was reelected for her third term just recently in 2021, and this post has no term limits. They serve at the pleasure of the monarch. So she either had to lose an election or resign, and she chose to resign. Again, she has enjoyed celebrity-like status in the Western media, but people who are critical of gender ideology are reducing her resignation to gender issues. And we're going to get to that because I do personally think she's a feminist traitor. But there are other reasons that we are going to cover. First, her resignation. Here is her announcing it herself today.
I'm announcing my intention to step down as First Minister and leader of my party. I have asked the National Secretary of the SNP to begin the process of electing a new party leader, and I will remain in office until my successor is elected. I know there will be some across the country who feel upset by this decision and by the fact I am taking it now. Of course, for balance, there will be others who will, how should I put this, cope with the news just fine. Such is the beauty of democracy. But to those who do feel shocked, disappointed, perhaps even a bit angry with me, please know that while hard, and be in no doubt, this is really hard for me, my decision comes from a place of duty and of love. Tough love, perhaps, but love nevertheless for my party and above all for the country.
Okay, the chat had some great suggestions from media darlings. You guys suck at this. Zelensky is a media darling. I was thinking
woman.
Gavin Newsom, media darling.
Oh yeah. First of all, Zelensky is the perfect media darling. Did you watch the BBC reporter just a few days ago give him a hug after a press? A BBC reporter hugging Zelensky. Yeah. Okay.
Did you see Macron and him like uncomfortably long embracing and holding hands? It was awkward.
No,
yeah, that was weird.
Greta Thunberg, media. So thank you for those. Those are excellent. Chat room gets an A.
Yes.
Boys, you guys get a C.
Okay.
Okay.
Lindsay Lohan. Okay.
It's like high school all over.
Lindsay Lohan. No. Okay. You guys are out. Fail. Okay. Back to Sturgeon. She lays out her reasons in this conference, and she says this is not a reaction to short-term pressures. She said she's used to that. She's been grappling with this for a long time, but she did say that leading the country during COVID was one of the hardest things she's ever done, and it wore her out. She used this sort of nothing left in the tank bit that Jacinda Ardern used. Well, it wore everyone out. Here is, I like this take from Toby Young from the Daily Skeptic, said Nicola Sturgeon was one of the West's most authoritarian leaders, an enemy of free speech, and someone who had no qualms about turning her country into a temporary dictatorship during the pandemic. Thank God she's going. Let's hope all other Western leaders who have made the same mistakes over the last 3 years follow her lead and resign before they're rejected by their electorates, starting with Justin Trudeau. Her pandemic record was a lot like Jacinda Ardern: strict COVIDism, limited personal freedoms, Western alignment, support for the war in Ukraine. Check to all those things, just like Trudeau, just like Ardern. Trudeau now is the last man standing of that media darling group. I'm going to say yes, Trudeau, media darling. She acknowledges, Sturgeon that is, that many people do not like her, and this is hindering her politics. Take a look.
I feel more and more each day now that the fixed opinions people increasingly have about me, as I say, some fair, others little more than caricature, are being used as barriers to reasoned debate in our country. Statements and decisions that should not be controversial at all quickly become so. Issues that are controversial end up almost irrationally so. Too often I see issues presented and, as a result, viewed not on their own merits, but through the prism of what I think and what people think about me. I've always been of the belief that no one individual should be dominant in any system for too long. But while it's easy to hold that view in the abstract, it is much harder to live by it. With this decision, I am trying to do so.
All right. So she says, things that should not be controversial have been controversial. Like maybe, what is a woman?
Yeah.
She's like, this shouldn't be controversial. But she continues to not be able to define what is a biological woman or the merit of a single-sex space. I agree with her. These things should not be controversial, but she has dug her heels in to defend these things that are indefensible. I swear I'm coming around to gender, but I also want to present you with a few other reasons that people don't like her, as put by this Scottish Member of Parliament, Stephen Kerr. Nicola Sturgeon looked around at the mess of her own making: gender reform, NHS crisis, strikes, council funding, A9 delays, education, disasters, ferries, and more, and she threw in the towel. The NHS bit that he's talking about, we'll take a look here. The healthcare system in Scotland is overrun throughout Britain, if that's the case, from delays from the pandemic and other pandemic-related issues. Doctors say this is from mismanagement and negligence from the Scottish government. Oh, but they did have time for this, and money. They ordered these rainbow badges to support trans rights in the national health system for healthcare workers to wear around, costing taxpayers over £33,000. And reports are that over 10,000 of them are just laying around unused because healthcare workers don't want to play politics while they're, saving lives.
Yeah, good use of money.
Yeah. Doctors are feeling that the system is neglected and mismanaged. But we got rainbow badges, so all good. The teacher strikes rages on over pay disputes. The reports are that they are going to get an offer soon, but they are on strike. That is currently happening. She mentioned in her speech the Scottish referendum for independence. She says she still does want this, but someone else has got to lead it because she doesn't think she's the right person to do that. So that's totally an unsurety now. We don't know if that will even happen. But even with all of this mess, it does seem like the hill she's dying on is about gender rights, the gender ID bill. We've discussed it a lot. It was the hotly protested bill that passed in November that would make it easier for people to legally change their recognized gender, dropping the age to 16 from 18 and no longer requiring a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And it would remove all that bothersome paperwork. Shortly after it passed, the British government blocked it because they said it will have implications for the whole of the UK. And Sturgeon said she would fight it, but then it all blew up in her face, especially last week over this case, the imprisonment of Isla Bryson. That's not Isla Bryson. That person was born as Adam Graham, was convicted of sexual assault, while Adam Graham, this is now that person, Isla Bryson. Take a look. Can we switch to the next picture? Maybe you're not there.
Sorry, I've lost control of the system. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just want to show you. Not that one. Okay, we'll get to that.
Here's Isla Bryson.
Can you take Clayton's laptop? There we go. That is Isla Bryson. This person was convicted of sexually assaulting. Can I use that word? Or maybe I shouldn't because social media. Of graping without the G. Okay. 2 women in 2016 and 2019 while living as a man. While in prison, they transitioned and told the court during the trial that they had always wanted to be a woman. Now, the mother of Adam Graham says that my son never showed any interest in being a girl as a child. And so I'm not sure why they would make this choice at the age of 29. And the mother herself was a sexual assault victim. So she's sort of horrified by all of this. But because of the self-ID culture in Scotland, Isla Bryson was allowed to be held at a female prison. And prisoners were reporting being tormented by this person. Again, the idea of a rapist in a female prison is something that anybody who promotes the gender ID bill cannot answer for. And here's last week when Sturgeon was forced to admit that this is wrong.
I heard the Chief Executive of Rape Crisis Scotland say this yesterday. I don't see how it's possible to have a rapist within a female prison. And so let me be very clear. I agree with that statement. And bearing in mind what I've just said about the importance of individualised risk assessment as a general principle and presumption, I think that statement is correct. Now, it would not be appropriate for me, in respect of any prisoner, to give details of where they are being incarcerated. But given the understandable public and parliamentary concern in this case, I can confirm to Parliament that this prisoner will not be incarcerated at Cornton Vale Women's Prison.
So can I ask the First Minister, above asking where he currently is, was there any ministerial involvement in the decision to send this rapist to a women's prison? And before that 72 hours expire tomorrow, will the First Minister personally intervene and remove this double rapist from Cornton Vale?
First Minister. I think I'd repeat some of what I've already said, but let me be clear. This prisoner is not going to be incarcerated in Cornton Vale, either short-term or long-term.
Okay. This was a big outrage over the last week in Scotland and in the UK. It's now come out that most trans inmates in Scottish prisons are men and that they do torment biological women. So this is why single-sex spaces, not because trans people are criminals, but because criminals can use the laws to access female spaces and torment women. And there's no one speaking for women's rights to single-sex spaces, and no one in leadership currently. In the past, when she was defending the gender ID bill, she'd asked, well, how do you know the difference between a trans person who just wants to access these spaces and a person who is a man who's exploiting trans rights in order to access and harm women? And her response was basically, you know that when he hurts the woman. So, like, we wait for that to happen before we know?
Let's just wait till he actually rapes. Okay, then we'll know. Then we know that.
Meaning it's acceptable to expose women to the possibility in order to validate a small group of people's ideology, using women as bait. Not my daughters. No, thank you. I'm saying no, thank you to this.
That's like going into a lion's cage and going like, is the lion friendly? And they're like, well, we don't know.
You'll know if you die.
No, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out. You go be the tester.
Maybe what they need to do is make them go through the surgery for, transition before they are put in there. Like, okay, a stipulation is you have to get the full surgery, then you can go in.
Well, they removed that because trans people were saying that that's discriminatory because it is painful and because it requires a lot of body sacrifice and pain. It hurts you.
Here's the thing. If you want to go move into a woman's prison, you want to go move into a woman's prison after you have been convicted of murder or you've raped other people. How about this? You want to move into a woman's prison, you will become a eunuch. Like, we will literally take care of that for you.
Human rights groups literally make sure that you can't do that to prisoners.
I'm saying, they're clearly not standing up for the other women.
Sure that they don't get graped.
Yeah. Right. They're not. So the other people that are in the prison where they're actually going to go physically harm those people, we're fine with that. But if you want to transition, then go full. Go all in. You want to go all in and go to a women's prison?
Well, right. I mean, again, the argument against that is that you're pushing them too far. Like, you can't, you should just accept my ideology without asking me to make these extreme bodily sacrifices. But we should fight for the right to do it to children.
Right.
It's, again, I saw somebody saying, like, she's resigning because you can't answer these questions. because you can't answer how you are not protecting single-sex spaces. Now, we have some more jubilant reactions to her resignation that I would like to show you because I had a little fun with them on Twitter. Here's a Welsh member of Parliament saying, Nicola Sturgeon announcing she's resigning. This is what happens when you decide to play politics with the lives and safety of women and children. Here's from Julie Hartlett Brewer, a radio show host. Dear Nicola Sturgeon, don't worry. You can still self-identify as the Scottish first Prime Minister.
First Minister.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though you're leaving, you could still say you're the first Minister.
If ideology is all it takes, yeah, and you don't even have to be 18. So
she could be an Asian man if she wants to. I guess under her ideas.
Tom Gallagher, who wrote a book on Scotland recently and how we got to the Sturgeon administration, also wrote the Salazar book that I liked a lot. He wrote, having promised last month to be around for the duration, suddenly the music stops and it's all over for Sturgeon. She never betrayed any sign that she was a servant of the people and instead treated Scotland as a petri dish for madcap experiments. Joy unrelieved for millions.
He's right. And, I saw an article last week. Since when did Scotland become the most woke country in the world? And this is exactly what's happened over the past year.
Yeah, I'm going to read that Gallagher book because it will take us back further than this. Here's another one from a guy that I follow who is gender critical, Icelandic gay guy. He says, Scotland rejects gender woo-woo. About time, good riddance. Congratulations, Scotland. And finally, from the Scottish Feminist Network, they are saying, we told you so, basically. She is this destroyer of women's rights. I tend to agree. Now, I've been waiting all day for a tweet from J.K. Rowling. I didn't see it yet. Anybody? Maybe we can...
I didn't see it either. I will mention she's out with she was interviewed in a big new podcast, something called something about the witches. I forget the name of it, where it's a full deep dive into her standing up for women's rights. And of course, she's been vilified for it and she's been called transphobic. And of course, that's all garbage. And so this new podcast series is out, this deep dive interview where she talks about this, all of this whole discussion around this. But she's been, of course, a big opponent of Nicola Sturgeon.
Yes, which is why she has not said anything. I've been refreshing all day, so I'll be looking at that. So
maybe she's gonna sit this one out.
Maybe
you don't take a victory lap. It's like, okay,
you don't need to.
You don't need to, right? Here's what happened. Yeah. The victory is in that she's leaving. So the people have spoken, I guess. Great. Well, we'll continue to follow that story and what's next for Scotland, and will they declare their independence? I mean, that's the next big question.
And I want to give an A+ to the person in the chat that named Dr. Fauci as a media darling. Yes, if ever there was a media darling, Fauci, definitely Dr. Fauci. A+ to that one.
If ever the darling there was, Fauci is one because.
Yeah. This was a good game. I appreciated your contributions.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Yes, we've got more news to get to here on the show. One thing that YouTube likes to do is suppress anything related to Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know why. Maybe you can tell us why. So for that story, we're going to move over exclusively to Rumble. Journalist Whitney Webb is going to be joining us to deep dive these new Epstein documents that have just been released. What is actually going on here? Is there more than meets the eye? We will talk to her about that. So come on over to Rumble. Rumble is a place where they will not censor stories around Epstein. It's really crazy. And when we were even covering the Maxwell trial, when we would mention it, it was literally, they would block it. They would it's crazy. I mean, this stuff is unfolding right before our eyes, and how these guys manipulate search results and suppress stories. So again, we're going to go over to Rumble and join us exclusively over there, rumble.com/redacted. So the stream will continue and we will talk about this Epstein story where they will not block it and suppress it. Over there. So thank you for that. And so come on over. We're going to say goodbye to our YouTube audience. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time live. But before we get there, we will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So please join us on YouTube or Rumble, wherever your decision of choice. Just know that one platform prefers censorship and the